The plasma bolt missed Jake Morrison's head by inches, scorching the metal wall behind him. He rolled behind a cargo container, pulse rifle clutched tight against his chest. The mining station's alarm screamed through the corridors, red emergency lights painting everything in blood. 3 days ago, this place was quiet. Just him and 47 other workers pulling rare minerals from the asteroid belt. Now half of them were dead, and the Krillian raiders were hunting the rest. Jake checked his rifle's charge. 20%. Enough for maybe 4 shots. Footsteps echoed from the left corridor. Heavy boots, at least 2 of them. He held his breath, counting seconds. The footsteps grew louder, then stopped. Jake risked a glance around the container's edge. A figure lay crumpled against the far wall. Not human. The body was tall, elegant even in death, with iridescent skin that shimmered between purple and blue. Valdari. He recognized the species from the trade broadcasts. They rarely left their home systems and never came this far into human space. But this one wasn't dead. Her chest rose and fell in shallow gasps. A massive wound across her side leaked luminescent blood. Her eyes, large and golden, found his. Intelligence burned in that gaze. Desperation, too. The Krillian voices grew closer. They were arguing in their guttural language, probably deciding which corridor to search first. Jake had maybe 30 seconds. Every survival instinct told him to run. Save the ammunition. Find an escape pod. Get out while he still could. He looked at the dying alien again. She wasn't trying to speak, wasn't begging, just watching him with those golden eyes, waiting to see what kind of man he was. Jake cursed under his breath and moved. He crossed the open space in 4 long strides, grabbed the Valdari woman under her arms, and dragged her behind his container. She was lighter than he expected, despite being nearly 7 feet tall. Her blood left a glowing trail across the floor. The Krillians rounded the corner just as Jake pulled her into cover. He pressed one hand over her mouth, the other steadying his rifle. The raiders stopped where she had been lying, following the blood trail with their eyes. They saw it leave behind the container. Jake fired twice. The first Krillian dropped, a smoking hole in his chest. The second dove for cover, returning fire. Energy bolts tore chunks from the container, showering them with hot metal fragments. The Valdari woman's hand closed around his wrist. Her grip was surprisingly strong. She pulled his hand from her mouth and whispered something in her own language. Musical, urgent. Jake didn't understand the words, but he understood the message. She was trying to help. Her other hand moved to the pendant around her neck. It pulsed with inner light, and suddenly Jake's mind filled with images. Not words. Pure meaning. A ship! Hidden in Docking Bay 7. A biometric lock keyed to her DNA. Their only way out. Jake hauled the Valdari woman to her feet, supporting most of her weight against his shoulder. She moved with him, one hand pressed against her wound, the other still clutching the glowing pendant. The Krillian behind the crate was shouting into his comm unit. Reinforcements would arrive in minutes. They moved through the service tunnels, away from the main corridors. Jake's lungs burned. The woman was light for her size, but after 200 meters his muscles screamed. She seemed to sense his struggle. Her golden eyes met his, and she pushed harder with her own legs, taking more of her weight. The station shuddered. Another explosion! Somewhere in the commercial sector. The raiders were destroying everything they couldn't steal. Standard Krillian tactics. Docking Bay 7 was on the station's outer ring, past 3 security checkpoints. All of them would be disabled now, but that meant no barriers between them and more raiders. Jake's rifle charge dropped to 15%. They emerged into a transit corridor. Empty. The magnetic rail system sat dormant, the cars frozen mid-track. Jake pulled the woman toward the maintenance ladder. They'd have to climb. She shook her head weakly and pointed at the frozen railcar nearest them. Her pendant pulsed again, and Jake understood. The car had emergency battery power. She could activate it remotely. He helped her inside and sealed the door. Through the window, he could see 2 more Krillians entering the far end of the corridor. They hadn't spotted the car yet, The woman's hand hovered over the control panel. Blood dripped from her fingers onto the buttons. She closed her eyes, concentrating, and the pendant flared bright. The car hummed to life. They lurched forward just as the Krillians opened fire. Energy bolts splashed against the rear window, spiderwebbing the reinforced glass but not breaking through. The car accelerated, following the magnetic rail toward the outer ring. Jake checked the woman's wound. Worse than he thought. The energy weapon had burned through her side, cauterizing as it cut, but the damage was extensive. She needed medical attention soon, or the alien technology in that ship better include a medical bay. She was watching him again. Even wounded, barely conscious, she studied him with an intensity that made him uncomfortable, like she was reading something written on his soul. The car slowed as it approached Docking Bay 7. Through the forward window, Jake could see the massive airlock doors, closed. Sealed tight, he looked at the woman. She nodded once and pressed her bloody hand against the car's window. The pendant pulsed, sending out a signal. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the airlock doors split open. The bay beyond was chaos. 3 Krillian fighters were docked there, their crews loading stolen equipment. At least a dozen raiders moved between the ships and the cargo. They all turned as the rail car emerged from the tunnel. Jake's rifle had 1 shot left. Maybe 2 if he was lucky. The woman grabbed his arm, pointing past the Krillian ships. In the far corner of the bay, partially hidden behind a cargo hauler, sat something that made Jake's breath catch. It was beautiful. Sleek and organic, like it had been grown rather than built. The hull shimmered with the same iridescence as her skin, shifting through shades of purple and blue. A Valderai Royal Cruiser. Jake had only seen them in hollows. They were rare, priceless, and supposedly impossible for non-Valdari to pilot. The raiders were running toward them now, weapons raised. The railcar's door wouldn't hold more than a few seconds under sustained fire. The woman's pendant blazed like a small sun. Jake felt the temperature in the car spike. She was using everything she had left, he realized. Burning her own life force to power whatever she was about to do. The Royal Cruiser's engines ignited. Pure white light filled the docking bay, so bright Jake had to shield his eyes. He felt the rail car lurch, felt it leave the magnetic track entirely. They were floating, suspended in a field of energy that pulled them toward the cruiser. The Krillians opened fire. Energy bolts passed through the field and dissipated harmlessly. The raiders tried to run, but the field was expanding, pushing them back, slamming them against the bay walls. The cruiser's boarding ramp descended. The field carried the railcar directly to it, through the opening, into the ship's interior. The moment they crossed the threshold, the ramp sealed shut behind them. Jake kicked open the car door and pulled the woman out. She collapsed in his arms, the pendant's light fading to a dim glow. Her breathing was shallow, irregular. He needed to find the medical bay immediately, but first he needed to get them out of this docking bay before the Krillians blew the airlock. The woman's hand found his face, turning it toward her. She spoke in her musical language, urgent and desperate. The pendant pulsed weakly, translating her meaning directly into his mind. The ship would obey him now. She had keyed it to his biometrics. She had given him command of a vessel worth more than 100 mining stations. She had trusted him with everything. Jake lifted her carefully and ran deeper into the ship. The corridors seemed to sense him, lights blooming ahead, doors opening before he reached them. He found the medical bay 30 seconds later, a circular room filled with equipment he didn't recognize. He laid her on the central platform. Immediately, the equipment came alive. Scanners emerged from the walls, bathing her in soft blue light. Mechanical arms descended, their movements precise and gentle. The ship's voice spoke, filling his mind the same way the woman's pendant had. A calm, feminine presence. It was asking for his authorization to begin emergency treatment. Jake gave it. The medical equipment went to work. He stood back, watching the machine stabilize her vital signs, seal her wound, pump her body full of medicines he couldn't name. The process took 20 minutes. 20 minutes while the station shook with explosions, while the Krillians tried to break through the cruiser's hull. Finally, the machines withdrew. Her breathing steadied. The golden eyes opened, finding him immediately. She tried to speak, but no sound came out. The ship's voice filled his mind again. She was asking him to take them away from this place, to pilot the ship to safety. Jake had never flown anything more complex than a mining shuttle. He ran to the bridge anyway. The command center was nothing like any human ship Jake had ever seen. No chairs, no physical controls, just a circular platform in the center of a dome filled with stars. He stepped onto it, and the ship came alive around him. Information flooded his senses. Not visual displays or audio readouts, but pure understanding. He knew the ship's status, its capabilities, the threats outside. The Krillians had attached breaching charges to the hull. They would detonate in 90 seconds. The station's main reactor was critical. 3 minutes until total failure. Jake didn't think. He simply wanted the ship to move, and it moved. The Royal Cruiser tore free of the docking clamps with a sound like thunder. The Krillian ships tried to follow, their engines flaring, but they were designed for raids and quick strikes. The Valdari vessel moved like liquid light, sliding through space with impossible grace. Jake felt every movement as if the ship were an extension of his body. When he wanted to dodge, it dodged. When he needed speed, the engines responded instantly. The 3 Krillian fighters pursuing them might as well have been standing still. The mining station exploded behind them. A brief sun in the darkness. Jake didn't look back. He pushed the ship harder, feeling its engines sing. The asteroid belt blurred past. In 30 seconds, they had put 1,000 kilometers between themselves and the destruction. The Krillians gave up the chase. Jake stood on the platform, breathing hard, his heart hammering. He had just piloted a Royal Cruiser, a ship that should have been impossible for him to even touch, let alone command. The ship's voice spoke in his mind. The woman was awake. She wanted to see him. He found her sitting up in the medical bay, the machine still monitoring her vital signs. The wound was sealed, her color better. She looked at him with those impossible golden eyes, and spoke. This time he heard both her musical language and the translation in his mind simultaneously. "You came back for me." "Why?" Jake shrugged, suddenly uncomfortable under her gaze. "Couldn't leave you there. Most beings would have. I am Valdari. We are not known in this region of space. You had no reason to trust me." "No reason to risk yourself?" "You needed help." She studied him for a long moment. "What is your name?" "Jake Morrison. I am Liara Veshkara, Crown Princess of the Valdari Sovereignty. Daughter of Queen Reshkala, heir to 17 star systems." Jake blinked. He had saved royalty. Alien royalty. This was getting more complicated by the second. "The Krillians ambushed my ship 3 days ago," she continued. "Killed my guards, destroyed my vessel. I survived in an escape pod crashed on your station. I was trying to call for help when they found me again." Her expression darkened. "They would have sold me." "The Krillian Empire pays well for Valdari prisoners, especially royal ones. Why were you out here alone?" "This is the edge of human space. Your people never come here." "I was investigating reports of weapons trafficking. Someone is selling advanced technology to criminal syndicates. Technology that should not exist outside Valdari space." She stood, testing her legs. The machines retracted, satisfied with her recovery. "I was careless. Assumed I was safe this far from Krillian territory. I was wrong." Jake followed her out of the medical bay. She moved through the ship with easy familiarity, leading him to what looked like a common area. Comfortable seating arranged around a central display. She sat, and he joined her. "The ship has accepted you," she said. "That should not be possible." "Royal cruisers are biologically keyed to Valdari neural patterns. No other species should be able to interface with them. Your pendant thing changed that, right?" "No. The pendant allowed me to communicate with you, nothing more. The ship itself chose to accept you." "That has never happened before." She leaned forward, studying him again. "What are you, Jake Morrison?" "Just a miner. Nothing special." "The ship disagrees." They sat in silence for a moment. Through the dome above, stars streaked past. The ship was taking them somewhere, following protocols Lyra had set before the attack. "Where are we going?" Jake asked. "The nearest Valderi outpost." 3 days' travel at current speed. I need to contact my mother, inform her of the attack. She will send ships to escort us home. 3 days alone with an alien princess on a ship that seemed to read his thoughts. Jake wasn't sure how to feel about that. Lyra stood and moved to a storage panel. She returned with what looked like food, though nothing Jake recognized. She offered him a crystalline package. "You should eat! The ship informs me you have not consumed anything in 14 hours. The package opened at his touch, revealing something that looked like fruit but glowed faintly. He took a cautious bite. It tasted like honey and starlight, if starlight had a flavor. "I owe you my life," Lyra said quietly. "Among my people, that is a debt that cannot be repaid with mere gratitude. You have claim on me until I discharge that debt." "I don't want anything. I'm just glad you're okay." She smiled for the first time. It transformed her face, made her look younger. "You continue to surprise me, human. Most beings would have demanded reward immediately. Position, wealth, technology. I'm not most beings, I guess." They talked through the night, or what passed for night on the ship. Liara asked about Earth, about human space, about his life before the mining station. Jake found himself telling her things he rarely shared, about growing up in the outer colonies, about losing his parents to a transport accident, about drifting from job to job, never quite fitting anywhere. She listened with complete attention, asking thoughtful questions. In return, she told him about the Valdari sovereignty, about worlds he could barely imagine, where cities grew like forests and ships sailed between stars on waves of pure energy. About the responsibilities of being heir to an empire, the weight of expectation she carried. Somewhere in those hours, the conversation shifted from political to personal. She asked about human relationships, about love and family. He asked about Valdari customs, about how her people connected with one another. "We bond through touch," he explained. "Physical contact allows us to share emotions, memories. It is how we truly know one another." That sounds intense. "It can be. It requires trust. Vulnerability." She paused. "Would you like to try?" Jake hesitated. This felt like stepping across some invisible line. But her golden eyes held only curiosity and something else. Hope, maybe. He reached out and took her hand. The moment their skin touched, Jake's world exploded into sensation. It wasn't painful. It was overwhelming in a completely different way. He felt Lyra's presence in his mind, but not invasive, like standing in warm sunlight. Emotions flowed between them, her gratitude deeper than words could express, her curiosity about him burning bright, her loneliness, centuries of it, being born into a position where true connection was rare and often politically motivated. And underneath it all, her fear. The terror she had felt lying wounded on the station floor, waiting for the Krillians to find her. The moment she had seen him and thought, "This is how I die." Then the shock when he came back for her instead of running. Jake tried to pull away, overwhelmed, but she held his hand gently. "Wait. Let it settle. You are safe." The flood of sensation gradually organized itself. He became aware of his own emotions reflecting back. His surprise at the intensity of the connection. His awe at glimpses of her memories, cities of living crystal, oceans that sang. His own loneliness echoing hers. They sat like that for several minutes, hands clasped, sharing something beyond language. When they finally separated, Jake felt like he had known her for years instead of hours. "That was," he started, then stopped. There weren't words. "Yes," she agreed softly. The rest of the journey passed in a strange, comfortable rhythm. They talked, shared meals, explored the ship together. Each evening they would sit and share contact again, the bond between them growing stronger. Jake learned to recognize her moods from the subtle shift of colors in her skin. She learned to read the expressions that crossed his face. On the third day, the ship's alarms woke them. Not danger, Lara assured him. They were approaching the outpost. Jake stood on the bridge beside her as the station came into view. It was massive, a construct of organic curves and crystalline structures that defied human engineering. Dozens of Valdari ships moved around it in careful patterns. "I need to contact my mother," Liara said. "She will be relieved, but she will also have many questions. About you especially. What will you tell her?" "The truth. That you saved my life. That the ship has accepted you. That you are unlike any being I have ever encountered." The communication channel opened. The figure that appeared in the holographic display made Jake's breath catch. She looked like Lyra, but older, with an aura of power that filled the bridge. Queen Rashkala. The queen spoke rapidly in Valdari, her relief evident even through the alien language. Liara responded, then gestured to Jake. He felt the queen's attention focus on him like a physical weight. They spoke for 20 minutes. Jake stood silent, not understanding the words but feeling the tension build in Liara's posture. Finally, the communication ended. "She wants us to return home immediately," Lyra said. "She is sending a full battle group to escort us. She wants to meet you formally, honor you for saving my life." "That sounds good, right?" Liara's expression was troubled. "She also wants to understand how you bonded with a royal cruiser. Some of her advisors believe you are a spy, that you somehow orchestrated the entire attack to gain access to our technology. That's insane. I'm a minor."
"I know, I told her."
"But there will be investigations, questions, tests. My people are cautious with outsiders. They have to be." She took his hand, the gesture now familiar. "I will not let them harm you. You have my word." The journey to the Valdari homeworld took another week with the battle group. 8 warships surrounded them, a display of power and protection. Jake spent the time learning more about Valdari culture, preparing himself for whatever awaited on the other side. The homeworld was called Veshkara, the same name as Lyra's family line. When they entered orbit, Jake understood why. The entire planet glowed with the same iridescence as Valdari's skin. Cities covered the surface, connected by rivers of light. 3 moons hung in the sky, each one carved with massive symbols he couldn't read. They landed at the capital in a palace that seemed to be grown from a single massive crystal. Liara led him through corridors filled with Valdari nobles, all of them stopping to stare at the human walking beside their princess. Queen Rashkala waited in a throne room that defied description. The walls were alive, showing scenes from across the sovereignty. The floor was transparent, revealing gardens growing below. The throne itself pulsed with inner light. The queen studied Jake for a long moment, then spoke. The ship's translation filled his mind. "You saved my daughter! For that you have the eternal gratitude of House of Kara. But you have also presented us with a puzzle. No non-Valdari has ever bonded with our technology. The implications of this are significant." "I didn't do anything, Your Majesty. The ship just responded when Lyra needed help." "Perhaps. Or perhaps there is something unique about you." She gestured, and several advisors stepped forward. "These are our greatest scientists and scholars. They would like to study you, understand how you interface with our technology. With your permission." Jake looked at Lyra. She nodded slightly, encouraging. "All right," he agreed. The tests took 3 days. They were thorough but not invasive. Neural scans, genetic analysis, tests of his ability to interface with various Valdari technologies. Through it all, Liara stayed close, her presence a comfort. On the evening of the 3rd day, the scientists presented their findings to the queen. Jake and Lyra were called to the throne room to hear the results. The chief scientist, an ancient Valdari with skin that had faded to pale silver, spoke. "We have found something remarkable. This human possesses a neural structure we have not seen before. It allows him to interface with our technology in ways that should not be possible. Is it unique to him?" the queen asked. "We believe so. It may be a random mutation, or it may be something else. We cannot say with certainty." The queen turned to Jake. "This complicates matters. If your ability became known, many powers would seek to exploit it. The Krylians would pay fortunes to capture you. Others would as well. What does that mean for me? It means you cannot return to human space. Not safely. The Queen's expression softened slightly. I am offering you sanctuary. You may remain here, under our protection. We will provide you with quarters, resources, whatever you need. Jake felt the weight of it settle on him. He could never go home, never see Earth again. The life he had known, simple as it was over. Liara stepped forward. Mother, there is another option. The Queen's eyebrows rose. Speak. He could join House Veshkara officially, as my bonded companion. Silence filled the throne room. Every advisor, every guard, stared at the princess in shock. You would bond with the human? The Queen asked carefully. I already have in many ways. The connection is there. It would simply formalize what already exists. The throne room erupted in whispers. Liara stood calmly in the center of the storm, her hand finding Jake's. Through the touch he felt her certainty, her determination, and underneath it, something warmer. Something that had been growing between them through their shared time together. The Queen raised one hand and silence fell instantly. Her golden eyes, so like her daughter's, moved between them. This is unprecedented. Baldari royalty has never bonded with an outsider. The political implications alone are staggering. I understand the implications, Mother. I also understand that Jake Morrison is extraordinary. Not because of his neural structure, but because of his character. He risked his life for a stranger. He asks for nothing in return. He treats me as a person, not a title. Liara's voice rang through the hall. Is that not exactly the kind of bond our house should celebrate? The chief scientist stepped forward. Your Majesty, if I may, there is precedent. Ancient precedent. Before the sovereignty was formed, royal houses bonded with worthy individuals from allied clans, regardless of bloodline. The practice fell out of favor, but it was never forbidden. The Queen's expression was unreadable. She stood and descended from her throne, crossing the floor until she stood directly before Jake. This close, he could see the centuries in her eyes, the weight of countless decisions. Jake Morrison of Earth, do you understand what my daughter is offering? A bond is not marriage in the human sense. It is deeper. Your life would become entwined with hers. Your thoughts, emotions, experiences would be shared. There would be no secrets between you, no walls. You would be part of House Veshkara, with all the privileges and dangers that entails. Jake swallowed hard. I understand, Your Majesty. And you would accept this? He looked at Lyra. In the days since the station, she had become the most important person in his life. Not because she was beautiful or royal or powerful. Because she saw him. Really saw him. And because when he looked at her, he saw someone who understood loneliness, duty, and the desperate wish to matter. Yes, he said, I would. The Queen studied him for a long moment, then turned to her daughter. You are certain? I have never been more certain of anything. Then let it be done! The Queen's voice carried through the hall. Prepare the bonding chamber. At sunset, House Veshkara will witness a bond unprecedented in our history. The ceremony took place in a chamber at the heart of the palace. The walls were living crystal, pulsing with internal light. A pool of luminescent water filled the center, fed by streams that ran from hidden sources. Valdari nobles filled the observation galleries, hundreds of them, witnesses to history. Liara wore robes that seemed woven from starlight. Jake wore traditional Valdari bonding garments, simpler but elegant. They stood on opposite sides of the pool as the Queen spoke the ancient words. Jake didn't understand the language, but he felt the weight of the ritual. This was old, older than the sovereignty itself, something primal and sacred. At the Queen's signal, they stepped into the pool together. The water was warm, charged with energy that made Jake's skin tingle. They moved to the center, facing each other. Liara took both his hands. Are you afraid? Terrified. She smiled. Good, so am I. It means this matters. The water around them began to glow brighter. Liara closed her eyes and began to speak. her voice rising in the ancient tongue. Jake felt the energy building, felt the ship's presence in his mind expanding, felt the palace itself responding. Then Liara opened her eyes, and the world changed. The bond they had shared before was a candle flame. This was the sun. Jake experienced Lyra's life in cascading moments. Her childhood in the palace, the pressure of being heir. Her first trip off-world, the wonder of seeing other stars. Her dedication to protecting her people, to being worthy of their trust. Her loneliness, surrounded by thousands but truly known by none. And then her memories of him. The moment she had seen him on the station and thought he would leave her. The shock when he came back. The growing wonder as she learned who he was. The realization that she had found something rare, something worth keeping. He shared his own life in return. Growing up in colonies where survival was more important than dreams. Losing his parents, the emptiness that followed. Years of drifting, searching for something he couldn't name. The moment he saw her wounded and decided that sometimes you just do the right thing. Consequences be damned. They stood in the pool as their minds and souls intertwined. When it was done, they were still separate people. But they were also connected in ways that went beyond words. They would always know where the other was, how they felt, what they needed. The bond was complete. The celebration lasted 3 days. Valderi from across the sovereignty came to meet the human who had bonded with their princess. Jake found himself overwhelmed by attention, but Lyra was always there, steady and sure. On the 4th morning, they stood together in their quarters, watching the sun rise over Veshkara's crystal cities. The bond hummed between them, comfortable now, natural. What happens now? Jake asked. Now we live. We work together to protect the sovereignty. We investigate the weapons trafficking that brought me to your station. We show our people that bonds between different species are not only possible, but powerful. She leaned against him. And we figure out this life we have chosen, one day at a time. I like that plan. 5 years passed. 5 years of adventures that became legend. Jake and Liara tracked down the weapons smuggling ring, fought off 3 Krillian incursions, and brokered peace between rival Valdari houses. They traveled to distant worlds, met strange civilizations, and faced dangers that would have killed them alone but only made them stronger together. The bond between them grew deeper, richer. They learned each other's rhythms, each other's strengths. Jake mastered Valdari technology, becoming the first human to truly understand their systems. Lyra learned human customs, finding joy in simple things her royal upbringing had never allowed. They never returned to the mining station. There was nothing left to return to. Jake's old life was gone, replaced by something he never could have imagined. And he wouldn't have changed a single moment. On the 5th anniversary of their bonding, they stood once again in the throne room. The Queen had called a gathering of the great houses. The hall was packed with representatives from across the sovereignty. The Queen stood before her throne, her daughter and Jake at her side. 5 years ago, I witnessed a bond that many thought impossible. Today, I stand before you to announce my decision. She turned to Lyra. You have proven yourself as a leader, a warrior, and a force for unity. You have shown our people that strength comes from openness, not isolation. The Queen removed the crown from her own head. It pulsed with inner light, ancient and powerful. It is time for new leadership, time for a new vision. She placed the crown on Liara's head. I name you Queen of the Valdari sovereignty. May you lead our people to new heights! The hall erupted in cheers. Liara stood tall, the crown settling onto her brow like it had always belonged there. Through their bond, Jake felt her mixture of pride, fear, determination, and love. She turned to him, took his hand, and faced their people together. A human and a Valdari. A miner and a queen. 2 people who had found each other in the darkness and chosen to build something beautiful. In the years that followed, they would face greater challenges. The Krillian Empire would not forget. Other threats would emerge from the depths of space, but they would face them together, bound by something stronger than duty or politics. They were bound by choice, by trust. by the decision to see each other truly and not turn away. And in a universe vast and often cold, that was the rarest thing of all.